Welcome into the PFF 2-minute drill. Austin Gayle here with my guy Kevin Cole. No Mike Renner today. He is out of the 2-minute drill for reasons I can't disclose. So I'll have to ask him why he's not on with us. Kev, let's go ahead and start with this. The Jacksonville Jaguars literally released Leonard Fournette, the former number 4 overall pick, and they also traded Ngakoue to the Minnesota Vikings for a second and conditional 5th-round pick. What are your initial reactions to both those moves for Jacksonville?
I mean, I think I like both of them a little bit. It depends on, what they're trying to accomplish here. A lot of people think this is all part of a tanking job, but yet when I look on offensively, losing Fournette, I'm not sure that's really going to affect them that much. They had a decent passing game last year. We graded Gardner Minshew fairly well, so they could continue to step up in that area, and they brought in Chris Thompson to handle a lot of the receiving load there. So I think they've filled out there. And as far as what may happen on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, I think they got a good return on the trade for Ngakoue. So I'm not, down on that necessarily either. They're really just going to have to lean fully into this rebuild, and that's what they're doing there rather than continuing to pay, top market to these different players that they've traded off. I mean, it looks really bad, all the players that they've lost over this amount of time, but if you're going to rebuild, you might as well clear the decks and start over from scratch.
Yeah, I agree with you that they're leaning into this rebuild, but I'm not buying into the fact that Gardner Minshew can tank. I don't think this Jacksonville Jaguars team is going to be a team that ends up being the one with the most losses in 2020. I do think with the Leonard Fournette move, I agree you don't have that $4 million salary hit. And also, Devine Zigbo, the former Nebraska running back, was a guy that Draft Twitter was big on, a bigger back that I think complements Chris Thompson very well. And as for Ngakoue, they had no leverage in that situation. He wanted out of Jacksonville, made that very well known. So to get a second and a conditional 5th-round pick in return for his services, I think was a good move for Jacksonville. I think both moves were positive EV for that team. Moving forward here, I got to ask you, Derwin James and Jalen Reagor both end up going down with injuries in training camp. Still unsure how long both of those guys will be out. Jalen Reagor rumored around 4 weeks, potential meniscus tear for Derwin James. Start with Reagor for me. What kind of impact do you think this has on these teams?
I mean, if we're supposed to believe what we were reading about training camp news, and I think there are some hard facts there about how often he was with the first team, how he was being lined up, that he was going to be a big part of that receiving core, and he was really a necessary piece there. If you look at what happened when it fell apart last year, going to this year, we don't know about Alshon Jeffrey, his availability early in the season. We don't know about Deshaun Jackson, how long he's just going to be available, knowing his injury history. And he was a player who we liked a lot coming out of the draft. And I think maybe some prognosticators were a little bit low on him as we saw him go before Justin Jefferson and some other guys. So I think he was someone who was going to step in and was supposedly building that trust. So I think it's a big issue. But if he can get back onto the field in a few weeks, it may not be the biggest issue. We have seen guys like Odell Beckham come back in and be decent in the past.
I mean, Jalen Reagor this past year at TCU had the third lowest percentage of accurate targets in his direction at TCU, was not given a fair shot in terms of good quarterback play to produce. People always look at his production this past year and second guess it, but his market share was good. What he did in the year prior was fantastic. Some drops on his tape that you don't like, but we were really high on Jalen Reagor, high on his explosiveness, thought he could win the valuable routes downfield. Losing him and having to lean on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and company is not going to make things easier for this Eagles team, but it's going to put a lot of pressure on Deshaun Jackson. I think Deshaun Jackson can still be a very valuable receiver in today's NFL if healthy. He needs to stay healthy more than ever now that Reagor's down. Let's pivot to Derwin James. Still not really sure what the injury is, but it's expected he's going to miss a few weeks. This is another guy that was going to have a big impact on this team.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of our favorite players. He can really do so much for that defense. And I think going to the season, the question for the Chargers was going to be, you have a team that outside of the quarterback, after Phillip Rivers left the team, was ready to compete. You bring in Tyrod Taylor, you're still thinking maybe we can compete this year. As pieces start to fall away, you have to think to yourself, do we try to fill this hole? Do we try to get along with what's somewhat of a thin group back there that they have behind James? Do they look at someone like Earl Thomas? Do they look at someone else who may be available? Do they want to spend that cap? But I really think this year, because they're probably not competing for the playoffs or a deep playoff run, you may just run with what you have, even if it ends up James being out for the entire season.
And the people that want to make the Earl Thomas connection to the Los Angeles Chargers because Derwin down, I don't think realize that Derwin does a lot of things that Earl Thomas wouldn't do in this Chargers defense, playing all over, playing in the box, rushing the passer, etc. I think Earl Thomas at his best is playing in the deep side of on the deep side of the defense, not playing as much as in the box as Derwin James was. I think they stay put, stay with the roster they have. They have Desmond King, Chris Harris Jr., Casey Hayward. That secondary is still talented. I think they can afford to not add a veteran piece like the likes of Earl Thomas and avoid that entirely. Moving forward, last thing we'll bring up here, Kev, Alvin Kamara reportedly not practicing for the New Orleans Saints due to a contract holdout situation or contract dispute, whatever it may be. What's your initial reaction to this Kamara holdout, and what kind of impact do you think this will have on New Orleans?
I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see the news on this, because when they redid the CBA, it makes holding out extremely difficult. This is not like what we had seen in the past, so it's probably not likely to be a long holdout. Kamara is going to eventually hit the market after this year if he stays there, so he doesn't have to worry about a fifth-year option or something like that, because he wasn't a first-round pick. And as far as being able to extend him now, the problem is New Orleans Saints have one of the worst cap situations next season of any team. They're really pushing forward and trying to succeed this year, and it's going to be difficult to extend him and not give him a bump on the cap this season. So I think the Saints are really just going to try to play this out right now and end up seeing what happens. I mean, we think he deserves money. We think that he's someone who can catch the ball out of the backfield, which is the most valuable thing. But I don't think the Saints are going to blink on this one unless it falls in line with what they want to give him, and not a boost that'll put him right up there with some of the top contracts that we've seen.
Yeah, I agree with you. If he's asking well above what the New Orleans Saints are willing to pay him, I think they ride this out as they should. And I think with Alvin Kamara, one of the more valuable running backs in the NFL, a great pass catcher, forces missed tackles at a very high rate, two things we really value here at PFF, but he's also been injured a decent amount over the past few years, trying to get him healthy, trying to get him on the football field. I don't think the Saints pay up, like you said, unless it's close to the number they want. I think Kamara eventually does play for this Saints team, but he might miss a practice or two.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.